all that I can be certain of, that I know, is that this energy of love is within all of us. I'm nothing special. It's inside all of us. And that just simply we overlook who we really are.
Yeah.
And by who we really are, I mean love.
Welcome to Late Bloomer Living, the podcast where we're all about shaking up our ideas about what it means to grow older. I'm Yvonne Marchese, your resident age agitator and play instigator. Around here, we believe midlife is the perfect time to play, to reinvent, and bloom like you mean it. Let's go. Hello, my friend. What happens when we stop running from our past and start listening to what it's trying to teach us? We're going to talk about that today. Today, I am speaking with Rachel Linnett. Rachel is a transformational coach, spiritual mentor, and artist who has spent the past 18 to 20 years guiding others on their own healing journeys. But today, we're turning the focus on her story, how a difficult childhood, a deep inner calling, and a love of beauty and creativity led her to do the work that she does now. Rachel grew up in England. She now lives by the ocean in Connecticut. And over the years, she's walked through her own process of healing and learning to live more fully as her true self. And we're going to talk about what it really means to heal, what it looks like to live a life that's aligned with who you really are. So Rachel also just recently published her first book, Droplets of Love, and very excited to talk to her about the process of publishing a book at this point in her life. So if you're in the middle of your own season of transformation or just wondering what it takes to truly come home to yourself, I think this conversation is going to speak to your heart. So let's go. Rachel, thank you so much for being with me today.
Hi, Yvonne. It's such a pleasure to be here in conversation with you. I'm really looking forward to what's going to unfold.
Me too. Me too. A quick shout out to Donna Cravata, who is the reason we met. We met through a group that Donna runs called Be Visible. And I realized you lived close by. And so we actually got to meet for coffee. And I just instantly felt connected to you. And I knew I had to have you on the podcast just based on that conversation that we had that day. So it's great. It's great to have you here. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So let's go back. You have what you call a traumatic childhood. Do you want to let's go back to that maybe, because I think a lot of people have some trauma in their background to varying degrees, and that trauma can be something that we carry with us, leading us through our actions, our decisions, the way we feel about ourselves, the way we feel about other people. So I wanted to learn a little bit more about your healing journey from that trauma to where you are now. How's that for broad?
Yeah. How long have we got again? Anyway, no, just kidding. Right. So in brief, my childhood, my parents used to fight all the time, and I witnessed fights of knives being brandished with each other, a lot of fighting, a lot of screaming and shouting, and very dysfunctional. My dad would have a girlfriend who would come around. My mum had a boyfriend who would come around. So it was just really kind of messed up stuff, really.
Yeah, wow.
And it was very, really traumatizing to be hearing these incredibly intense, angry outbursts. And also the fact that my brother and I were overlooked a lot because they were so busy focusing on their issues, my parents. And my mum actually left when I was about 9 years old, or at least I think that's the age that she left. And she left my brother and me with my dad, who was a very angry, stressed man who wasn't easy to be around. And it was always walking on eggshells around him, trying to not set him off, kind of thing. And so it was sort of feeling like I got hit from both sides, really, with a mother who left and she went to live about 6 hours away. And I saw her about 3 times a year after that. She basically exited my life, and being left with a dad who I felt completely unsupported by and would regularly, I mean, thankfully, there was no sexual abuse involved. Thank goodness. I know other people have experienced that, and that wasn't the journey for me, but I experienced a lot of mental and emotional abuse from him, of him really dismissing me, belittling me, and saying I'll never amount to anything. And my mind goes back to a couple of really big accidents that I had when I was very small that created a lot of beliefs that I have to look after myself and that the world isn't a safe place and you can't trust anybody, which actually, I'll just backtrack. I was about 3 years old, and one of them was I was apparently standing on a stool stirring boiling custard, that sort of hot, sticky stuff for the Americans who may not know what custard is, being
Mm-hmm.
English. It's really hot, boiling like mixture, and I knocked the pan and the whole custard went all over my face and had
Mm.
these awful burns. And I remember seeing photos of me with bandages all over my face like a mummy. It was really severe burns to my
Wow.
face. And I don't know what happened, whether I slipped or whatever. I have no idea. But anyway, that was whilst my mum was taking care of me. And then another one was I was kind of learning to walk, I suppose, and had my hand around the side of a sliding door. And for some reason, my mum shut the door and it cut the end
Mm.
of my finger off,
Oh dear.
and had
Mm.
to go, and whatever. I have a funny shaped finger, and that was, extremely traumatic. They had to take graft off me. My finger is a funny shape, and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I had these accidents, which really had me like, oh my God, I can't trust her to look after me. On a really deep level, I'm not safe. The world is, a scary place. So anyway, I had a lot of these kind of things running through. And I then played out a lot as a teenager. I was a pretty off the rails kind of person, and just decided that I had to look after myself. And I was very tough, and I didn't let anybody in. I had a really closed heart. I didn't trust anybody, and so I kind of lived my life like that. I had a great big black cloud over the top of my head for many, many years. And I didn't address it. I didn't know how to. I did other things instead, in terms of drinking and guys and, whatever it was to take my mind off the pain that actually was existing inside of me. And it was only in my 30s that I had a massive row. And in fact, my book begins, the prologue mentions this story of where I had a massive angry outburst at my best friend at the time. And I mean, flew off the handle at her just verbally. And I remember seeing the terror in her eyes as I was screaming and shouting at her. And I
Mm.
didn't stop. I kept going, and it destroyed our friendship and
Mm.
had massive consequences for our friend group and things. And I realized at that point in my mid 30s, I need to do something about this. This is not okay to unleash this anger on anybody else. I can't behave like this anymore. It's not all right. But also the other piece was like, I need help. I need to do something to help myself. And so
Yeah.
that's really when my healing journey began, when something so big happened to me that I couldn't avoid it any longer. And I met a friend called Alison who did some Reiki with me. And I'm like, wow. And then, the journey from the Reiki experience, I then went on to learn modalities for myself, healing modalities, because I was blown away by the effect that Reiki was having on me. I'm like, how is that happening?
Had you always been open to the idea of something like Reiki or anything like that? Like, what convinced you that Reiki could be something to try?
Mm. I was really skeptical about alternative healing, and I didn't like being touched. That was like a no-no for me. People, I don't like hands-on. No, thank you. Didn't like that. So actually, it was the fact that this friend of mine, Alison, was a dentist at the time, a practicing dentist, really bright woman, and I really liked her. And she had healed a shoulder injury through Reiki. And she told me the story, and I was thinking, what? I was very curious. And so I
Yeah.
said, she'd learned how to do it. And I said, well, will you do that with me? And she went, sure. So I went round to her house, and I was on a massage table in her dining room. And she just came just slightly near to me. Her hands weren't even touching my head. And I began to see this incredible kaleidoscope of colors, like, whoa, like incredible, as if you were sort of hallucinating. And I saw this massive eye in my mind's eye, this big eye, just like looking at me and like blinking every now and then. And I also remember in that first one, it was, I had this image of my chest cavity opening and all this dark smoke leaving my chest. And the
Wow.
tears were pouring out of my eyes. And I
From one
knew it was,
session,
yeah, I promise you.
first session,
Yeah.
boom.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. The doors blew off, Yvonne. It was crazy.
Wow.
And the tears were falling, and I knew it was linked to my childhood, but it wasn't about me needing to go over it or talk to anybody, because I'd never wanted to have therapy. I didn't want to talk about it. I just shut everyone out. So yeah, that was like, oh wow, there is something in there. So I went back and had more. But then the really big convincer, as if that was not big enough, was actually I was spending a year becoming a Pilates instructor in London, and I developed a chest infection during my training, and I couldn't breathe properly. And one of the keys is really breathing into your rib cage and front, sides, back. And I just could barely breathe at all. I went to the doctor and he said, oh, he diagnosed asthma in my mid 30s and gave me these medications and said, you're going to have to take these for the rest of your life. And a little voice inside of me, my inner wisdom, said to me, you don't have asthma, go and see Alison's Reiki teacher. And so I booked 3 sessions with him. And during the first one, it felt as if there was a massive elephant sat on my chest, and I panicking. I was lying there going, oh gosh, it's got even worse, right? But I
Yeah.
couldn't breathe. And I wanted to just go, yep, no, no, thanks. But again, this voice inside me was saying, just stay still, stay still. And it was as if my body couldn't move, even though part of me wanted to get up and go, yeah, no, thanks, too much. I also kind of couldn't move. And after that session, my breathing was a lot better. And then after the second one, it improved further. After the last one, everything went back to normal. And I was so confused by that. My logical brain, because I did my training is in engineering hydrology, and I was a very logically minded person.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I don't understand this. I went back to the doctor and he repeated the breathing capacity tests, and everything was back to normal.
Hmm.
And I was like, I have no idea what just happened there. But I want to know more about it. And so that was how I began my own journey in terms of learning those modalities, because I moved to America soon after that with my family.
And you
And
learned how to do Reiki yourself, right?
yeah, as soon
Yeah.
as I got to America, I went through the whole thing, because this all happened quite close together in
Mm-hmm.
succession, really. Yeah.
Wow. 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 Wow.
Mm.
How did the move to the United States fit into this journey for you? Because that's a big shift. I'm gonna guess, to come across from England to the United States. I imagine that was pretty impactful.
Mm.
How do
Yeah.
you think that fits in?
It was so important. I hated it at the time. I
Yeah.
didn't want to come.
Uh-huh.
And because I left behind all my family and all of these friends that I had really strong friendships, and my homeland, I really identified as being English. And I landed in this small town in New Jersey, and I really struggled. It was horrendous. It was awful. I mean, it really truly was a dark night of the soul for me for many, many, many months. And I felt like I didn't fit in, and my kids were struggling. The school put them both up a grade. So they were 6 and 9 years old when we moved over. And simply because kids start school earlier in England. And I really didn't want to do that for their own social, developmental
That's a
reasons.
that's a big deal. Yeah. Yeah.
And I was scared about doing that. I just didn't want to. But at the same time, I knew that the school was adamant, saying we can't have them in their age group. They have to go up. And so that was really difficult. But yeah, it was really awful. But the best thing was that was exactly what I needed. But at the time, I had no idea. I'm like, what is that? My life imploded. I hated it. I would have gone back in a heartbeat. Nothing prepared me for actually running a family and a home, and everything is so different. I used to say it felt a bit like having been in a coma for 10 years and just waking up and not having a clue how anything works anymore. It's so funny. It took like 3 months for me to find out that you could actually put letters in your mailbox and the postman would take them away. I mean, I needed an idiot's guide to living in America. I'm like,
Oh,
what?
I can't imagine
Yeah,
how
yeah,
discombobulating that must have been.
yeah.
When did that feeling of like the dark night of the soul, when did that lift for you and why?
I think I think my Dark Night of the Soul lasted quite a long time actually, but I think it came in waves and different intensity, because when I moved to America, that's when I really began my own inner healing journey. So it wasn't just I arrived in America, this is really awful. I was at the same time doing all of the Reiki training, which led on to doing neuro-linguistic programming training and hypnosis. And, I've done a lots of different courses and things. And as I was doing those, they were all about inner change. And so I was kind of on fast forward. I kind of went, let's ramp this baby right up there. So not only was
Wow.
I dealing with the circumstances of a massive life change, but also that I was actively choosing to go and do these courses. And really, there was just something so deep inside of me driving me to do that. And I think that where it's led me to is this place of really, on a very visceral level, understanding that we are all love, which is, hence the title of my book, Droplets of Love. But it took me quite a while on my journey to get to that point. I had a lot of stuff to clear, to release, beliefs about myself, just emotional shit that was stored inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a journey. And so it kind of came and went, it came and went. But the lovely thing about Jersey is that over time, I made some really lovely friends, and I'm still very close with some of them today. And and it was just what I needed. It really was most what I really needed to
Isn't it
experience.
funny how you can find yourself in a situation that just seems awful, but it's actually, in hindsight, you look back and go, okay, well, I guess that was exactly what I needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
anybody who's listening right now and you're in that dark night of the soul moment, just
Mm.
know that this might be the best possible thing for you. I know that's hard to
Yeah.
hear. I've been there.
Yeah.
Um, did you know from the beginning that so much of the journey was about your parents and what went wrong there? Were you angry with them? It seems like you've done a lot of healing around that. I'd love to know how you did that because whew, that parental thing, when we don't get what we need from our parents,
Mm.
it can be a really tough thing to heal from.
Yeah. And as you mentioned right at the beginning, Yvonne, it affects every area of your life, every single area of your life.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes unnoticed. It's just things don't feel good. Things are a struggle. Like I said earlier, like I felt like I had this black cloud over the top of my head. I mean, it's so toxic. It's such a toxic thing to carry around with you. And yeah, in terms of with my parents, I mean, I tried for a long time to kind of protect my mum about not talking about how I was impacted by her leaving.
Mhm.
And so it was never mentioned. It was always been the elephant in the room. And in fact, we didn't have a discussion about that until my mid 40s, when I finally brought it up. But I could only bring it up from a healed place where I had forgiven her, not from a wounded place.
Mm.
And I think that there were many years when I suppose I kept her at a distance, but there's this incredible, intense love. I mean, she's my mother. She gave birth to me. And the pain of, and she left me. And she left me with somebody who I didn't feel safe with was really, that was a lot for a young person to deal with. But what happened with her is that over the years, it was really hard actually with my mum. It's so interesting you asked me that because it was kind of easier to do the healing on my dad's stuff. But I think the mother wounding, and this is often the case for people, is really tough one to navigate. Really hard to heal from these deep, profound mother woundings. And and what we do inside of ourselves is we protect ourselves. And so I'm a firm believer that we all have different aspects of ourselves. And so we could call them parts or aspects. I'm sure the listener may have heard about that. But so for me, these younger parts of Rachel, who are still alive in my psyche, who was so wounded, are really scared of letting anybody in. And they held on so tightly. And it's kind of funny now I look back, but all the different courses I did, it was almost like, God damn it, because I'm tenacious, right? I'm a determined, tenacious soul. And I
Hmm.
would be doing all these different things like, surely this is going to do it. Surely I'm going to get that. Almost forcing this poor young me to just like, come on already, come on, come on. And I got quite impatient with that for a while. But
Mm.
finally it happened, and it really happened. The power of loving ourselves is the most potent medicine imaginable. It goes beyond the rational brain. I mean, it really is. I mean, that if there's anything I know after all these things I've learned, it is in the absolutely true healing force of
I,
love.
I believe that too.
Basically, there are just loads of different modalities that people can choose, right? There's a
Hmm.
massive array of, oh, I could try this, I could do this, just
Yeah,
my experience
absolutely,
of it,
because
right?
different things work for different
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
Absolutely. Hmm.
Actually, a friend of mine, Annette Nolan, introduced me to Gangaji's work, and she's my spiritual teacher. I call her my mothership to this day, and incredible woman. And anyway, so when I met her and began reading her teachings, and I went to her retreats, that is really where the healing of my of my younger self began.
Yeah. Was
Because
that in 2011? Because I was reading up on some of your journey before we spoke.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was right after that, actually. Yes, it
So
was.
we're talking about like close to 15 years
Yeah.
that, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
And
Gotcha.
particularly when I saw her on retreat, like in person for the first time. And that was like, wow, it's like everything stopped inside, is the best way I can describe it. And it just felt like there was this spaciousness, and it felt like I was loving myself for the first time ever. I could feel this energy of love. It was as, so I'm going to get really emotional, but it was as if my heart had just opened instead of being so closed. And all of the things I had done to that point, meaning all of the courses and things, were all necessary steps. They were all necessary stepping stones on the journey to me meeting Gongaji and being ready and ripe for my heart to open and for me to truly truly know myself as love. And I know to some listeners that might sound a bit trite, I don't know, but because it can sound a bit cheesy, but it really, that as I said again, it's all that I can be certain of, that I know is that this energy of love is within all of us. I'm nothing special. It's inside all of us. And that just simply we overlook who we really are.
Yeah.
And by who we really are, I mean love.
Yeah. And
And
that
and
does sound there, that is going to put some people off. Some people just aren't ready to hear that. Like, I imagine if you had met her or heard of the work that she was doing, 5 years before that, you might not have been open to it, especially coming from a more scientific background. I think people have a lot of problem with the woo-woo if they're more science and material thinkers. So
yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
Hey, let's take a quick break because I've got something fantastic to share with you. Have you ever thought about what it really means to live your best life? Well, my dear friend Lou Blazer has, and she's sharing her discoveries in her weekly newsletter called We're All Getting Older. It's a newsletter for anyone exploring personal growth, intentional living, and embracing joy, especially in midlife and beyond. Lou has this wonderful obsession with the idea of dying happy, and she shares her insights on how to make the most of our lives right now, every week. I look forward to opening her emails every week because it's filled with inspiration and actionable ideas. If that sounds like something you'd love too, you got to check it out. Signing up is super easy. Just head over to loublazer.com. That's loublaser.com. And you can do it there. Trust me, you'll thank yourself for it. And now, back to our regularly scheduled programming. What brought you to writing the book?
Okay.
What was it that was like, I think I have a book in me now?
I was having a reading with an Akashic record person, consultant, if you like, and actually
Can you
taking a
tell me what
private
that
mentorship.
is?
Yeah, sure, I know.
Okay, cool,
Yeah.
cool.
The Akashic records really are, it's like a whole, call it like a library of everything of our soul's journey through all of time. So before we're born and in this lifetime and beyond. And so what happens when somebody accesses your Akashic records, they have a prayer and they're really aligned to that energy and they access your Akashic records and they speak to the energies of what's going on in your life. If you're having problems with somebody, they can be like talking to you about these energies that's within you and what is here for you, for your own personal evolution through time, what your soul came here to learn in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And so you might be having a really difficult time. It's like it can throw light on or help reassure and soothe. And it's also wonderful for doing healing work as well, being inside somebody's Akashic records. That's really in a nutshell what the Akashic records are. And I was doing this private mentorship with this lady called Brenda Pell, and she was talking to me about how there are 3 books you're going to write in your lifetime. And I was like, really? And again, this is going back a really long time, actually. This is probably about probably again about that time of like 2009, 2010. And she said, it's right above your head. All you have to do is like open and it's all going to flow. Just open, it's all going to flow. I'm like, okay. So I tried that and did a bit of writing, but it just wasn't flowing. It wasn't all connected somehow. So anyway, I just thought, fine. I just kind of put it to one side. And then I didn't even think about writing because I was busy with my painting. I was busy with my one-to-one coaching clients and just busy with other things, really. And then a few years ago, it was about 3 years ago, I started to just get a nudge to start writing. I'm like, okay. So I bought myself this beautiful big book, big journal, and just was starting to write like stories from my journey, on my spiritual journey. I had no idea what form it was going to take, what it was going to be. It wasn't like I'm writing my book. I was like, I just felt an urge to write. And so that's what I was doing. And I wasn't editing it, I was just writing, just getting it out and writing. And so I was continuing with that. And then the next piece that happened was that my dad died very suddenly in November 22. And there was obviously a lot of grief around that. And also for me, mixed in grief and relief, which is a very, grief isn't easy, but it was like there was a lot of positive things that came out of my dad's death. And one of them was that I never have to be subjected to that behavior ever again. But also that so many positives came out of it because I had this incredible desire to really get going with my book. That was when I knew, oh, there's a book. And I realized when I looked at my journal, there were like 3 different books I was kind of writing. I'm like, okay, Rachel, we're going to have to settle on one of them here because I can't write 3 books at once. And I realized it was the one which was pulling in stories from my childhood and weaving through and teaching stories, different topics, basically, and in really wanting to be this support to people who are navigating, whether it's healing from difficult childhoods or whatever it is, just tough shit that happens in life, or people who are really wanting to connect with their inner wisdom and love themselves, because to a lot of people, they're kind of like, lovely idea, but how do I do that? And that's what I've got a lot of experience with, right? I guide people to that place. That's exactly what I do with people. So that's when it was like, all right. So I signed up for writing courses with Christine Carlson of the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff brand. Amazing woman. And so all these things started to fall into place. And I was then at this point of began to really have a structure around my writing. But at the time, I was still painting a lot as well as writing. And so I find it hard to have a foot in both worlds, of both creative, but both requiring, in a way, different parts of me. And I broke a toe. Well, I've broken 3 bones whilst writing this book, actually. And the first toe was really realizing, because I couldn't stand up to paint, literally, because I had a broken toe. and so I'm like, okay, guess I'm focusing on my writing then. Was like, okay, it had me sit down. It's like, well, I can't walk the dog, I can't exercise, I can't paint, I can't, and I had my initial like, humph, my lack of control. But the universe had another plan for me, which is like, sit down and focus on this book.
Just a gentle little nudge. Just a gentle little nudge. Oh my gosh.
I think it was actually a bit of a slap on that occasion, but yeah.
Sometimes that's what it takes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow. And how interesting that as you're writing in your journal and you go to look at it in the form of, well, is this a book? You saw 3 books, which she told you were going to do. That's so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I now know that because what was happening with the book is, as I was writing it, there are experiences that were happening in my life as I was writing the book that came into the book. And so I love that. So this book is also like a living, breathing thing of not just, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago, this. It was amazing. There's a really brilliant coconut breaking story in there that happened whilst I was writing the book. It's like, wow, it's like this really powerful story. And so I was threading in these things as and when guided to, because they're all teaching stories.
Yeah, it's the best way to teach. I have a question for you that I definitely wanted to make sure I got into this conversation, which is, when did you start using the phrase true self? And what does it mean to you?
True self. I think the first time it really took, when I really embodied true self, as in I wasn't reading about it or being told about it. Oh, true self. Yeah, true self, was when I met Gangaji. When I experienced true self, because this woman radiates love. I mean, it comes blazing out of her eyes. It's amazing. And actually you get that if you watch her on YouTube. There's loads of videos of her on there. You don't have to see her in person. But anyway, I think so. She talks about this concept of true self. It's like, and also this idea of coming home to yourself. So I equate coming home to yourself, your true self is really coming home to love again. It's all love, but I call it love. It's a capital L, love, not I love mint chocolate chip ice cream, or I love chips, or whatever that might be, or I love my husband. It's not that kind of love either. It really is love, this energy of love, which is who we are at our core. And so
Yeah.
that's what I call our true self. And an aspect of that is our inner wisdom, our inner guidance. So some people might be like, well, true self is, so that's like an aspect of it, I would like to say. Or at least that's how I experience it. And I can only speak from my own experience. I'm sure there aren't any right or wrong answers, but my take on that is
Yeah.
true self is love, and knowing oneself as love. Because as I say, it's one thing to be told, oh, you're love, but when you experience that, and that's the journey I take my clients on, and what they experience, they're like, oh my God. I mean, actually, I have a really great story for you. And which is, I used to have this monthly gathering called Self-Love Sanctuary, and a mother and a daughter used to come along to that. And the mother was in her mid 80s at the time. And I loved these sessions. Oh, my goodness gracious me. This incredible lady had had a really difficult life. And she said to me, Rachel, I don't even know what self-love is. I haven't got a clue what it is. And so she's in her mid 80s. And so I would do these meditations, breathing things, and the work that I was doing with them. And she had this most incredible experience where in this meditation, she went into her heart and said, there's a bench in here. She said, I see this blue sparkly light. And she could feel this energy of love throughout all of her being. And she said, I've never, ever felt this, ever. She said it was incredible. And she said, and there was a bench in my heart. And I know all I have to do when I want to experience this is go back into my heart, and that bench is always there.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like the first one we did, right? And I'm like, whoa, this is great. And then every month just built on that and these experiences for her. And then she died in October. And her daughter, who I'm friends with, said to me, you helped her transition, right? Because she was so scared of dying. And that she had experienced this energy of love, of who she is at her core. Not anything I said, do this, do that. Just she had her own natural experience of what that was in the months leading up to her death. And it was just the most incredible gift. This friend of mine talks about it, incredible gift to her, incredible gift to her mum. And I was saying, an incredible gift to me to be a witness of this is the most incredible, wonderful transformation.
Yeah.
What a beautiful, beautiful gift. Yeah.
So, how do I ask what I want to ask? As you said, I think you started to say in talking about the true self, like maybe tell me if I'm on course here. There is, there can be a an intellectual, that's the word I'm looking for. There can be an intellectual recognizing of these concepts, of this idea of love or source or whatever you want to name it. And then there's the experiential realization of that. And I imagine that there are a lot of people who might be listening right now, even who are like, I don't know what self love is either. Not really. Like I may have an idea of it. But I guess the question I'm trying to get to is how can somebody who feels like they're curious or they want a breakthrough in their life, what can somebody do to start, let's just say?
Mm. That's a big question. And especially because it's different for everybody, which is
Right.
a genuine answer to that. It is different for everybody. But I would say there is one universal, which really helps, is nature, which is really getting out and wherever you live, whether it's sitting in grass or whether it's getting your hands in the soil or your feet and hands on a beach or into water or just being outside and touching trees and really being present, having this mindfulness and not listening to your devices, to switch off your phone, don't have your AirPods in. It's like, that's not being in nature. It is, but it's not. I'm talking about really a communion. Goodness knows why I use that word. I'm not religious in the slightest. But anyway, this communion, this true, like a sacred connection with nature, be out there, be fully present, look at what's around you, feel things, just breathe and, really easing into it really can begin. If you really are like, what the heck is that? I can't, that's not for me. I have no idea what that is. It's a great way to begin to go inward. And it might initially feel uncomfortable to not have music on or be chatting to a friend on your phone or listening to a podcast. And, but that's not downtime. I'm talking about silence, of being outside. Really, to just be with your experience can be a great way to begin. And I think the other one, which again is an easy one for everybody to adapt to, is breathing, but really simple breathing techniques, intentional breathing. And for me, the key one is breathing in on a count of 4 and breathing out for a count of 8, and doing that for several minutes. And as you can take your eye to like a point, like whether it's you're outside somewhere, on a tree or whatever on the horizon, or if you're in the room at kind of eye level, and just noticing your peripheral vision, like wiggling your fingers and noticing, oh, I see my fingers as I'm looking ahead. And that really helps get everybody into the relaxation response in their bodies. And so it's like, just beginning to slow everything down. And I think too, it's being really compassionate with yourself and very, very patient. Because when your nervous system is hardwired to fight or flight, the stress response, we're so overwhelmed with life at the moment, most of us. Speed of life, just like, whoa. It really can take a while to just begin to slow everything down. It can feel panicky to slow things down. And so if you feel panicky, if you feel that stresses you, it's all okay. Don't sort of go, oh, this is wrong, I'm not doing this right, kind of thing. And, maybe the steps, there are some listeners who will be able to take this and then what I'm about to say, and they'll be like, whoa, this is like really cool. But others will need somebody to be the facilitator. We're all different in terms of what we're able to do by ourselves, and that's okay. It's not good or bad or better than somebody else. It's just a reality. So for me also, this concept of breathing into your heart. So imagining you're breathing into your heart. And you're breathing in, peace.
I'm
You're
already
breathing
taking in deeper
love.
breaths listening to you.
Yeah.
So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, right. But breathing in, imagine you can breathe in through the top of your head, breathing in self-love. Even if you have no frigging clue what it is, doesn't matter. Play, be playful. And you can be light with this.
I think play can be an access point for people, is to have a playfulness or allow more time for play in their lives. For me, that is an access point at the moment.
I agree. And you love to dance, right?
Yeah.
Dancing is a wonderful way to do healing, where, you're just letting it loose, doing, moving to music, getting your body move, let it shake, let it get the energy going, can also be a really great way to start peeling off some layers of what, is not you, is not the true you.
Dance breaks in my kitchen. They're a regular thing in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say. I feel like I wake up with the heaviness, right? And our cortisol levels are naturally higher in the morning because that's what gets you to wake up. But it also is like stress, right? So I try to reset, and part of that these days is turning on my playlist of favorite music that I can't help but dance to, and I'm making breakfast and dancing at the same time.
I love that. What an amazing way to start your day. Yeah. And that is so healing as well. It's not just like fun. So, and I know you know this, but I'm really speaking to the listener, and that it truly is healing. The movement, dance, because if it's making you smile and you're feeling like, whoa, this is like fun, just like moving along as I'm whatever, frying an egg or whatever.
It's literally the thing, like dance like nobody's watching, because I don't want anybody watching me, that's for sure. But...
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's great. So, you also were talking about in the morning, in terms of the higher cortisol levels. One of the things that I often do is I wake up in the morning and I do a quick inner check, like what's going on. And this feeling, I've got a wedding. I was telling you before we actually got on recording, my daughter's getting married in my back garden in 5 weeks. I'm like, my book's just launched. I've now got a wedding. I'm like, whoa, I kind of woke up. Woo. So much to do, kind of thing. And inside it's like, oof, yeah, a bit stressed, a bit tight. And so I'm like, okay, it's taking my own medicine, which is what I write about in the book, which is breathing in. What is it I most need to experience in this moment? So it could be calm. It could be feeling calm. So breathing in calm and breathing out whatever shit needs to leave. I mean, you could just say tension, stress, but I say don't label it. You don't need to know what it is, but just breathing out that heavy, dense stuff. And so whether it's color or whether it's choosing an essence, as I call it, like breathing in self-love, even if you're like, I've got no idea what it is, like be playful, be curious, go, you know what? What if, I love that question, what if I sat down and was breathing in self-love? What then? What's that going to feel like? So sit down and do it and just like breathe, even though you're like, I don't know what it is, just you're just basically sending out that intention of, I'm going to breathe in self-love. I'm just going to let this come in, and like, and what does that feel like? And breathing out whatever wants to go, whatever doesn't believe that I can ever feel self-love. That's not for me. You know, maybe you breathe that out as you breathe in, even if it's you breathe in the possibility of loving yourself.
What if is a powerful
What
question,
if?
right?
Yeah.
Because it just lets possibility come in. Oh, I love it. Okay, I think that was a lot for people to take in. Thank you for the tips on like just different access points that people might try for themselves to see what does work, you know?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
appreciate you doing that. How can people find you and your book?
Good question. And you made me think of another access point, my book.
Exactly.
So funny. I didn't even think about that at the time. But anyway, my book is all about this journey into loving yourself. So yes, I would absolutely highly recommend that you read that.
Now I haven't read the book. The book is hot off the presses.
Yeah.
So what do you have like access points in there and those ways for people? Is it like a little bit of a practical guide or is it more story based?
Yeah, it's very much it's a mix, actually. There are
Okay.
some stories from my life, but there are also tools in there, really practical tools. And I'm talking people through guided visualizations and things to help them as well.
Okay.
And asking great questions to help provoke some kind of inner exploration, I suppose, as well. And as it's very inspiring, it's very positive based. Look, if I can do this, like an engineer with this fucked up childhood, right? If I can be in this place, trust me, anybody can. I'm like, it's really so true. So anyway, what I decided to do as well was record the guided visualizations that I put in my book. Because, you know, when you're reading a book and you get to, they've got this great visualization, you're like, but I'm reading it. I can't read it and do it at the same time. And if you record it in your own voice, sometimes it's not, it doesn't work as well. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll record them so that people can actually then listen to these different visualizations. So it's not the audio version of the book. It's not the audio book, but it is these visualizations. And so that's
Like
on my
a companion
website.
piece to go with it. I love that. I did notice that on your website when I was visiting. That's fantastic. I love that you're providing that tool. Awesome. So people can find you at rachellinnett.com, right? Is that the best place?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Awesome. Rachel, I'm so glad. I loved our first talk, and this was just equally awesomeness. And I hope to continue being able to connect with you and continue this relationship. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Yvonne, for asking me on. I've had an absolute blast. It's been so much fun. Thank you. And I really look forward to our blossoming friendship as well. Thank you so much.
Well, there you have it. I hope this conversation with Rachel gave you some fresh insight, or at the very least, a gentle exhale. Whether you're in the midst of your own healing journey or just starting to get curious about what it means to come home to yourself, I hope Rachel's story reminded you that transformation is possible at any age and in your own time. If you're interested in learning more about Rachel or getting a copy of her book, I'll have links where you can connect with her in the show notes for today's episode. You can just go to latebloomerliving.com/podcast and look for episode 233. And hey, if something from today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. You have no idea. It really helps me to hear from people to know if I'm putting out stuff that's really of interest to you. And you can always reach me through my website at latebloomerliving.com. And hey, let me know if focusing on mental health for the month of May was helpful for you. This will be the last of that series. Or let me know if there are other topics that you want to hear more about. Like if you want me to bring on an expert to talk about something. I have ideas, but it's always nice to hear from you. And before we go, I also want to give a quick shout out to another podcast that I think you'll love. If you love this podcast, you're going to love this one that I'm about to tell you about, which is Reinvention Rebels, hosted by Wendy Battles. Wendy and I met last October and have become fast friends. And she shares inspiring conversations with women 50 to 90 who are boldly reinventing themselves and redefining what's possible in midlife and beyond. Sound familiar? Yeah, because she and I are on the same mission. Wendy recently joined me here on Late Bloomer Living. That was episode 228, and it was such a joy to talk with her. So be sure to check out her show at reinventionrebels.com and get ready to be inspired. Thanks so much for listening. Keep blooming. Bloom like you mean it, my friend.